There's been a lot of talk and videos over the last several years about how ESG and DEI have filtered their way into corporate America, specifically entertainment. A lot of people will tell you that you're absolutely crazy. That never happened, but we've actually got a former Disney exec speaking out, talking about how that is absolutely happening. Here talking about that is my good friend Aaron Sparrow. How you doing it?
I'm doing all right. You have sprung these topics on me today, so everybody's getting everything off the cuff.
Oh, that's how you do your best stuff, Aaron.
When you get my impassioned rant of the moment.
Absolutely. And it's pretty crazy how much you get gaslit when you point out the absolute obvious things that are going on in Hollywood. You're like, oh, no, there's no DEI initiatives. ESG doesn't mean anything. It doesn't get to control what the product ends up being. It's 100% true that whoever controls the money is going to get to control what actually comes out of these big companies.
It's absolutely true. And, the funny thing is it goes through that cycle, right? We've all seen it. And it's very true. People have memed on it where it's like, this isn't happening. This is happening, but it's not what you think. Everything that you think happened, but that's a good thing. That's the cycle that these things go through. The conspiracy theories that turn out to be conspiracy fact.
Former Walt Disney Television executive Monica Harris recently explained why Hollywood is collapsing and put the blame squarely on DEI initiatives. She began by pointing to Target. I think the reason we see no course correction is the same reason we see Target market items. And I think we know which items I'm talking about that clearly don't appeal to consumers. I think when you have like trans Cheerios and stuff like that, you're making a statement that has nothing to do with your audience and its taste. Harris continued, what we've seen in the corporate world is this fastidious and slavish adherence to ESG principles, which are really just DEI in practice, in products, and the hiring in the corporate world.
Yeah, one thing affects the other. I think it's funny that she said trans Cheerios. Is that a real thing? It sounds ridiculous, but
attention anymore.
But I would not be surprised at this point. But no, we saw it with Bud Light, and even my dad was like said something about Bud Light today when I talked to him about like, boy, they never really recovered from that, did they? And if it filters down to a normie like my dad, then you've really screwed up. The fact that he's become aware of it, like that really tells me something. But you hire these people based on DEI. You hire activists, or you hire people who, their one thing, the one thing that's most important to them is this cause, and then they're gonna work that into your company, and pretty soon your company is going to be going down that path, and it just doesn't appeal to the majority of consumers. We've talked about that, these niche kind of ideologies and lifestyles and things like that they're trying to push into the mainstream, but it's not mainstream, and it's not going to become mainstream no matter how hard you try, because the mainstream rejects it. So you can't cry when these things lose money, because you set out to lose money by appealing to a very niche consumer.
Also by going out for products that are specifically designed and point to people that are against all that stuff. When you see the stuff with like Bass Pro Shop, you're like, that doesn't even make sense. Or Harley Davidson's going woke. Why would Harley Davidson go woke? Look at your consumer base. Look at the people that are buying your products. You should be creating things and initiatives that make them want to buy more products, not make them want to boycott you forever, because they think you're destroying the entire fabric of our culture.
Yeah, like, okay, Harley Davidson, your core customer base is guys that look like Doc. And yes, guys that think like Doc. So what are you doing? This whole idea, it's insidious. This is what, the bill of goods that were kind of sold to every corporation was that there's this huge untapped market of people that are going to respond to all this. And time and time again, we see there is no untapped market. There's no buying power within these groups. If I think the straw that really broke the camel's back with all of this is, I think that because there's definitely little like shatter points or flash points that occur that kind of like put the lie to this whole thing. But I think a really big one was Hogwarts Legacy. When the Hogwarts Legacy got announced, you had everybody trying to get people to boycott the game because of J.K. Rowling's views on the trans community and the trans movement. Everybody tried to was just trying to vilify her and vilify that game and organize a boycott. And that game, it basically Streisand affected that game, and the game became even bigger than it probably initially would have been. First of all, the Harry Potter fan base is huge. They don't care about, what J.K. Rowling thinks about. They either don't care because they just enjoy that universe or they agree with her. That's the majority of the Harry Potter fan base. Sorry, I hate to say it, but that's the truth. And they proved it by showing up in droves for Hogwarts Legacy. So I think that that's like one of the first really big moments where we got to see that this lobby has no actual power. All they do is scream on social media. But when it comes to the actual consumer power that they have, they don't show up, or they don't have the ability to influence anybody. So why are you listening to them?
I definitely think you're on the right track. I think there's I don't know if there's a moment, but there's a specific topic that I think really caught normies' attentions. Every day mom and dad's going to work. They don't have time to go up and read up on all this stuff. And, maybe they don't notice it happening all the time. But once it became very, very apparent that they were trying to normalize being trans, and they were trying to take children and groom them at very young ages, put them on puberty blockers and take the power of the parents to have any say in that away at like the state and government levels, I think that was the moment, or really one of the linchpins, where people are like, whoa, this shit has not only gone too far, it's gone so fucking far that we need to go back because we're not doing this. And I think them pushing the envelope to such a degree to really target children with all this stuff was really that moment that became, a sea change in American culture, of becoming aware that all that stuff you're seeing, that was fucking real.
Yeah, when you saw, because people hear this stuff and they think that you're a normal person and you're going about your day and you're just trying to get by, you're trying to pay your bills, which are have become almost insurmountable in the last several years. It's like that's what you're focused on. You're focused on your family. You're focused on taking care of them. So you're not involved in the whole culture war thing. You're barely paying attention, and you hear about it and you go, oh, that sounds ridiculous. That's probably overblown. And then you see that Target is trying to push tuck-friendly swimsuits on children. And that's like a wake-up call to normal people. They're like, wait, what's going on? And then they go down the rabbit hole and they find out like how far this has gone, and they push back. And this is always the problem with pushing too far. It's like, I've always said like there's a sensible center, and I know a lot of people that think that way. It's like, hey, like, you can live your life and I can live my life, and we can find the sensible, center where that happens. But it's when you start pushing and you start pushing and you start pushing, eventually the back gets to the wall and the pendulum swings back, and the pendulum swings back hard. And I think that's what we're seeing now.
Monica Harris then spoke about the deeper I've been digging, I've noticed this is happening because the same core group of companies are largely funding or have majority shareholder stakes in Fortune 500 companies and in the S&P 500. We're talking about BlackRock. We're talking about Vanguard. We're talking about State Street. And those are some major companies out there that people have been talking about for a long time. And a lot of times when you bring up BlackRock or you bring up Vanguard and ESG scores and what that means and how it's affecting the products that are being out there and what's available to people, like, oh, you're crazy. That's not what they're doing. They're just market capital. They're just there giving money. No. There's a reason they're associated with every company that ends up pulling this shit on people.
Well, and we've seen I can't remember what, I think it's the head of BlackRock. We've seen the video where he's talking about how, culture moves slowly, so we need to force it. And the way that we do that is through investing in these companies and putting out these messages. But, what they're finding is you can pour a lot of money down that hole, but it doesn't actually influence the culture. It actually creates a resistance, and a heavy resistance. And like I said, you're going to have the pendulum swing back, and it's going to swing back hard. And it looks like it's swinging back towards, a hardcore conservatism. It looks like, especially the young males that are like coming up right now, they're all like leaning conservative on TikTok. Like Trump is like huge on TikTok. Like they love him. They think he's funny. They think he's like a funny like grandpa character now. Some of the TikTok stuff that I'm seeing. So you've lost control. It's the old line from Star Wars. The more you tighten your grip, the more slips through your fingers. And that's, I think, what we're seeing in the culture right now. And thank goodness for it, because I think that a culture is always best served by viewing things with a heavy amount of scrutiny and skepticism and not buying into what they're being told. And we've had a long period of people buying into what they're being told. You see a lot of people out there with received opinions. Like you can just go down the checklist. We talk about Rachel Leishman every week. We know what her take on a subject is going to be. You just mention a subject and we know what it's going to be because we know where she receives her opinions from. And I think that you're starting to see a lot more people reject that, and a lot more free thinkers come out, and a lot of people that are willing to question. And we should be able to question everything.
Well, because it's been an overwhelming priority and objective to take anything that was considered masculine, call it toxic, and try to feminize it, try to take anything masculine out of the culture whatsoever. So you have an enormous generation of young men that almost their entire lives, maybe that they can remember, they've been told what makes you unique, what makes you a man is bad. And they do feel like a lot of people kind of left them in the wayside. They didn't care about them. And they're finally pushing back. And I'm glad that they came to that realization, because I think women are great. You know who makes bad women? Guys. And you know who makes bad guys? Women. Like, there's a reason that we have biological differences. And to go out and villainize somebody because they were born with a different appendage than you, then act like none of their opinions ever mattered, and it's blowing up in their faces big time.
Well, I mean, we've said it before, and I say it all the time. I don't think there really is any such thing as toxic masculinity, because toxic masculinity is protective. It's risk-taking. It's daring. It's, it stands up for things. It's got, I think that when you have things that are referred to as toxic masculinity, those things are actually the absence of masculinity. Your douchebro behavior in the gym, your locker room talk, you're treating women like objects. That's not masculine. That's not, that's all a lack of masculinity.
And a lot of times those are men that were raised strictly by women without fathers in the household, without real masculinity to look up to.
Yeah, I mean, I shudder to think of like how I would have grown up if I was only raised by my mother, who was a basket case. It wasn't until my stepdad came in and gave us structure that my brother and I stopped being feral. Basically, like, we might as well have been raised by wolves until my stepdad came along. And he came in, and he's a guy who believes in he believes in chivalry. He believes in being protective. He, believes in all these like masculine ideals. And he kind of instilled that in us. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to behave. And I've found that every time I've rebelled against what he tried to teach me, my life is worse. And every time I've tried to, follow his example, my life is better. So, that's kind of the area that I'm operating from. And if I may channel my inner Mike Barron for a moment, this really reminds me of Kneel Before Doomface, which is launching this week, and is if you want to read a book that's that honors women but is also inherently masculine, this is the book.
Final statement from Monica Harris on the subject, and I think very much the same is true in Hollywood. DEI has swept through that place. The Academy Awards, the nominations are only available to films that hit certain quotas, right? You have to have a certain number of people that are Black or BIPOC, trans, non-binary, whatever. It's the total antithesis of what artistic work is about. But they have to do this because I think Netflix was an example. If they don't adhere to these guidelines, those loans, that funding is going to be yanked.
It's interesting, isn't it? How they're trying to influence all these things, but it's the antithesis of just kind of like normal human behavior. And I've said it before, in the comic book industry, I've always hired the best people that I can find, the people that are the best for the job, or the people that have the most enthusiasm for it, are best suited to write or to color or to draw. I've always tried to hire those people. And accordingly, I have always ended up with a very diverse staff, because as in the words of the late great Macho Man, the cream rises to the top. So when you try to jury rig the system and you try to say we need to have a certain quota of, where everything is equal across the board. Well, number one, the population is not equal. So you're already creating an artificial environment where you're going to elevate people who are less talented because you have to hit a certain quota of a less prevalent demographic. So that's not going to work. You're going to have less talented people, and we are seeing it in AAA gaming. We're seeing it all as they have to have all these check boxes. You're hiring people who can't do the job. Just hire people who can't do the job, and you'll probably work out to the right averages.
Well, also, it hurts the creative endeavor itself, because let's say you want to go back and make, I don't know, on Netflix, a show about Vikings. You're like, oh, shoot, we're doing a show about Vikings. We're going to be in England, a white country where origins are going to be in Scandinavia, where Vikings came from. We're not going to have enough people of color. Let's put a Black female Viking king in there. That'll check 3 boxes on there, and we can keep getting our loans. And then you have a show like Vikings Valhalla, where people are just laughing at it without even watching it, because you've destroyed the premise of your show of being, a pretty true to the time period tale, and it makes it look fucking stupid. People's brains are wired to say, hey, I'm watching a show about, I don't know, 1500s, Vikings. Why is this in here? It makes no sense. That's why we have shows being produced like in the UK. Members of the royal family are black. That doesn't even make sense.
You can do like a reimagining, but you have to be not very
of clear. Real people.
Yeah, not of historical
of real
events. I mean, but it has to be like an alternate history. You have to be clear about that from the front. Like it has to be like an Inglourious Bastards, where it's like, yeah, this is not meant to be a serious retelling of this story. This is meant to be a fictional telling of it, and then people will respond accordingly, however they feel. But yeah, no, it's ridiculous, especially with period pieces. You're doing something set in the modern day, and you're doing it in it's set in Los Angeles, or it's set in New York, or it's set somewhere where you actually do have that kind of modern day melting pot diversity. Then yeah, you should cast it appropriately. But if you're doing Dunkirk, you can't be like, well, why aren't there more Mexicans in Dunkirk? It's like, because it took place in Britain during World War II. These were the guys that were there. We're following the actual story. Yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah, and it's been happening for a while. Remember when they did like the 9/11 monument thing? Well, we saw the picture of the 3 firemen that were putting up the flag, but then when they created the monument for it, it had to be completely diverse. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? That's not a true accounting of the events. Yeah,
that's not historically accurate. Okay, you want it to be representative of all New Yorkers. That's fine, but this is a real thing that happened, and these were the real guys. Honor the real guys that did it. Why are we creating a fictionalized version of our history? But that's what they want. They want a fictionalized version of everything because it's all very Orwellian and it's all very 1984. We have to rewrite everything, and we have to throw out all the real facts, and we have to replace it with facts that are more convenient to us, and the agenda that we're pushing. And so that's what you get. And I'm glad to see that people are pushing back on it because it's ridiculous.
Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm glad that Mrs. Harris, former Walt Disney executive, going out there talking about some of the research she did and the things that are absolutely destroying and torpedoing Hollywood right now. One man that will never sell out to ESG and DEI scores is Aaron Sparrow. And you have Kneel Before Doomface launching on Kickstarter, within the next 24 hours?
That's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a Halloween launch. Should be pretty fun. Going to be doing a show over on Maxfield Von Priestley's channel, our good buddy MVP. We're looking to do a Halloween stream, and we're looking to launch the book. So if you want right now, you can go to kneelbeforedoomface.com. You can get on the VIP list, which will give you access to discounts and things of that nature. You can also go over to the Kickstarter page. Just go to Kickstarter and type in Kneel Before Doomface, and it should bring up the campaign.
Thank you very much to Aaron for joining us today. If you would like the entire Geek Fix experience, because this is an entire podcast, this is only 20 minutes of that. You do need to go to Think Vertical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. You go there, you find the Sparrow's Never-Ending Christmas Tree tier, or you can even go higher than that and do as the Doc is Right tier, and you get all the Doc and Jim podcasts as well. Lots of fun stuff there. Hope to see you very soon.